promised you a topic today. Excuse me. Let's get that out of the way. So, what do you really need to troubleshoot enterprise Wi-Fi? And there's going to be controversy. There's going to be opinion and raised eyebrows, and hopefully provocation of thought, and maybe some good discussion at the end, because that's really the goal. Not even to be contrary, just really to spark some critical thought. So about me, I have been around, but I also don't want to assume that everybody knows who I am, because that would be pretty darn vain. The main thing I want to point out to those of you who don't know me, the third bullet down, I have been in the game for quite a while. I'm a geezer, and I'm okay with that. I have no choice. And the things that I'm about to present and talk about and the perspectives I share come from my own experiences. We all have our own frame of reference. We all have things that shape our thoughts, and all I can do is offer you mine. I've been lucky to be a practitioner of Wi-Fi pretty much from day one, but I've also got to do different things out in the industry all along the way, and it all adds up to the thoughts that I'm going to share with you today. So again, onto the topic. What do you really need to troubleshoot enterprise Wi-Fi? Well, we're going to talk about it. I'm going to tell you, so I hope you're listening. So I present to you the motivational pug. This was an AI generated image, if you can't tell, and I want to point out a couple of things pretty quick. I asked for a pug riding a Harley, carrying a wireless router or something like that. I want you to notice the pug has no hands, or at least his hands are not where they should be. They're down on his knees, or the saddlebags, or his wide butt, whatever that is supposed to be, under the directional lights there. And then also I want to point out that the antenna seems to be connected not to the router, the antennas, not to the router, but they seem to be connected to the motorcycle itself. And for what it's worth too, the router isn't strapped to anything, so it's just kind of hanging out there. Just silly points about a silly image. But basically, AI didn't nail it, and we're going to need that in a little bit. Just carry that thought with you. So, what do we need to troubleshoot Wi-Fi? Well, it's pretty simple. Just fire up your Google search and type that in. What do we need to troubleshoot Wi-Fi? That's it. The world we're living in says AI-powered interactive guided troubleshooting. Troubleshoot your wireless networks with AI. AI. It's all AI. If you can accept that, we're done. Just basically embrace AI, and we can go right to Q&A, I guess. Now, just kidding. If only it was that simple. But that is the weird world we're living in. The topic of Wi-Fi support, Wi-Fi troubleshooting comes up, and Silicon Valley and those who interact with Silicon Valley have decided that AI is it. I don't want to call it the flavor of the month, because it's probably going to be the flavor of the year and the flavor of the decade. And hopefully someday it lives up to all of its promise, but I think we're still kind of at the beginning of the hype cycle. We got lots of hype, and I don't mean to completely devalue it, as we'll find out and we'll talk about, but it just this kind of nonsensical notion that if you buy AI in the form of anything, you're done. You've got what you need. And that's just not the case, in my opinion. All of these dashboards, all of the machine learning, all of the sensors, they certainly can have value, right? But they're not miracle workers. It's not, Harry Potter stuff. Depending on the system that you're working with, depending on the scenario in play, that's being supported by these, AI enabled things. You might get a lot of value and you might not. They all start off with a set of default assumptions and parameters, and the way that they were coded kind of sets how they start off, but you really may need to tune them. I can tell you firsthand from working with a number of these systems over the last several years. You got human beings behind this. The developers aren't always really all that well in tune with what wireless networks are about, how to support them, all of that. They're really good, perhaps at data science and such, but there's still very much a human factor behind the whole AI thing, and especially, in my opinion, as it applies to Wi-Fi support. Again, not throwing dirt on them. They can be valuable, but again, it's just not infallible wizardry or anything that even comes close. So before we keep going, let me just give you a little bit of my perspective on wireless support in general. That phrase, in a well-designed wireless network, that's pivotal here. When the network has been well-designed, I'm telling you that the problems are mostly individual client issues. And then the next common problem I have found to be system code. The code itself that runs the wireless network is often pretty buggy and erratic. It is what it is. And then you get into the things that are related to design and maybe topology. You got APs that aren't negotiating LLDP or CDP right. They're not getting PoE right. Somebody moves some walls that you didn't know about, so your design actually changed. This is kind of my pecking order of noted problems. But the interesting thing is that this is often at odds with the dashboard. The dashboard wants to assume, or it seems to want to assume, we gave you a dashboard. You got to have a ton of system problems. We are going to just show you all kinds of stuff that are problematic, lots and lots of red and yellow and things to get worked up about. But I'm telling you that the problem is still, when the network is solid and healthy, it's still individual client issues. And again, those two are kind of at odds, those two thoughts, the dashboard and the fact that, most problems are individual user problems. And then we see so much in the dashboards where they do give us value. You still got to go out and verify. They kind of become, I don't want to say untrustable, but they're so imperfect right now and so fraught with false alarms. The dashboard becomes that pug with no hands. It got most of it right, but the important parts, it didn't. The dashboard is a pug with its hands down on its, coming out of its knees, as silly as that sounds. Almost there. Very interesting, but it still needs some work. Again, a very general statement, but I've worked with multiple vendors, latest, greatest, hottest, AI this, AI that, and it's like, okay, it's interesting, but it's still not absolutely trustable. And if I were to give the views that come out of those dashboards to my help desk, which a lot of them want you to do, the people at the help desk would just cringe because there's so much red that can't be substantiated. And perhaps it's fleeting and it's not tuned, whatever. The reputational damage of placing the dashboard in the wrong hands when actually things are humming along just fine, it could be pretty bad. It's a very curious time because we're so early on in what AI is trying to do. So how does this tie into what do we really need to troubleshoot Wi-Fi? We're getting there. I guess I'm telling you, what we don't need, which is a lot of AI falderall. So let's see where this goes. It is my supposition and assertion and, whatever you want to call it, that the super systems don't always understand reality at what I'm calling a very large and dynamic scale. So you get 30, 40, 50,000 client devices, you get thousands of APs. You got this thing is not just monitoring Wi-Fi, it's also trying to tell you when DNS isn't right. And it's trying to tell you when DHCP isn't doing what it thinks it should do. And different things related to both the 802.11 side of the equation and the 802.3, and then a whole bunch of protocols. It's trying to do all of that, and it's trying to do all of that from the perspective of the designers that hopefully got good inputs from technical people, but it's absolutely not infallible. So you end up with views like this. And again, this might be one vendor that you recognize, but it's meant to represent a bunch of them. You go out and you actually try to verify and validate these things, even though they're AI validated. AI is telling you that this is what's going on. A lot of it can't be replicated. Lots and lots of red, but there's no trouble tickets, and the phones aren't ringing. And if you go to where this stuff is happening, it just can't be duplicated. So there's just a lot going on that gets you to the point where you look at the AI dashboard, you look at it, and then you look right past it, because day in and day out, there's so much that equals overwhelm. It just becomes untrusted. And again, that's at the large scale. When it comes time to troubleshoot individual user problems, kind of a different story. And we'll get into some of that too. But again, where we're going, the target is, what do you need to troubleshoot Wi-Fi? And I'm telling you the things that I find to be not particularly helpful as we work towards the goal. So I'm telling you, as the wireless professional, you ain't going anywhere for a while, regardless of what what goes on with AI and the promises that the as a service people might be trying to sell. You're not about to be made irrelevant. Just isn't happening. If anything, the basics of wireless have never mattered more, like I'm saying at the bottom. And that's because wireless is getting to be so ever more prevalent, so ever more ubiquitous, using all the big marketing words. It's just everywhere. Every study comes out telling us how many billions and billions more devices we're going to see next year and the year after that. I don't buy into all of that particularly, but I do know that it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and people love wireless and people want to do more with it, which means that the basics of supporting wireless really are still very relevant. No two scenarios are exactly the same, even where you do, boilerplate cookie cutter drugstore deployments. Each one of those still has some differences. Your operational goals in that scenario may all be the same store to store, but things are going to be varied in the fixtures and in the environmental stuff and what your neighbors are doing and the influence of the neighbors in one strip mall versus another on the others, and perhaps the composition of the roof and the spaces you rent and the how they built the walls, whatever. There are differences across all scenarios, even ones that feel like they should be cookie cutter. And certainly when you get into my university versus your university, my factory versus your factory, my large public venue versus your large public venue, lots of technical differences, lots of operational differences to the Wi-Fi, which bring us closer to what we're trying to get to. What do we really need to troubleshoot Wi-Fi? Well, I'm going to hit on three important broad concepts, and there's nothing new here. You might be seeing it. It's like, okay, there is just nothing new. So, okay, AI is garbage. It's not. It's just not as robust sometimes as presented and sold. But we don't leave the fact that we need the RF basics. We need this foundational knowledge. How does 802.11 work? How does 802.11 and 802.3 work together, because they very much do work together. They're both 802 dot. One side of the AP is wireless, the other is wired. And we have to understand all of that stuff. We have to know, when I say client device basics, you're never going to know every client that's out there. You're never going to know off the top of your head what driver they're all using, what chipsets they're all using, but you have to at least recognize the disparity, and that when things get ugly out in the wireless environment, you may need to dig into those clients. Even that realization goes a long way. Security, what's the difference between OWE and WPA2? And if I'm running transition mode on a network versus not, that's what I mean by security basics. And then just common sense stuff about, MAC filtering, good, bad, useless, pointless. Have to have a working knowledge of IT security, especially as it applies to wireless. When you're troubleshooting, unfortunately, a lot of us are introverted, nerdy, not people, persons, whatever the right variation there is. When it comes time to troubleshooting, boy, basic spoken and written communication and picking up the phone, that goes so far. What exactly are you experiencing? Okay, so are you getting an IP address? Are you not getting an IP? Do you see the SSID? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? If you can just communicate with people and ferret out details, it takes you a long way to get into the bottom of problems. And then the bottom point there, like I said, I don't see these dashboards as totally worthless. I find them to be the most valuable when you have a targeted and specific problem that you need to go troubleshoot versus, okay, dashboard, tell me the 10 million things that are wrong today that nobody is complaining about. When I actually need to drill in on a legitimate problem, that's when I find the dashboards actually do sometimes provide significant value. So that's the foundational knowledge. Beyond foundational knowledge and just good technical awareness and chops, I'm saying that there are nuanced capabilities. You can be, Joe CWNA all day long, and that's great. But you have to understand that situations vary from place to place. You have to know, when I say constituent client group borders, boy, what a mouthful that is. Well, if I've got business machines that are doing machine authentication, and then I've got a big BYOD environment, and then maybe I've got some oddball devices doing something else, and then I've got guests, they all may have different behaviors. They may all have different technical workflows. Just knowing how those client groups differ in an environment can be very helpful. I'm a big proponent of that 10,000 foot view of zooming out, not just rushing in knee jerk, assuming everything is a Wi-Fi problem, looking for something I can tweak, looking for some timer that I can adjust, kind of taking a deep breath, zooming out and truly assessing, the problem scope and, what does this really feel like and what doesn't it feel like? One thing that sounds easy to say, but is harder for people to achieve is the ability to resist jumping to conclusions. And I see that as being, one of the faults of a lot of the current AI systems. Okay, this is happening, boom, that equals this. So one case in point, system I work with currently is kind of fond of saying, you got a bad cable over here. Thank you for pointing out that something isn't right with that connection, but about 30% of the time, it may be a cable problem. The rest, it's the AP and the switch maybe didn't negotiate the right speed and duplex. I reset the port, and that cable that was deemed bad is perfectly fine, and the connection sorts itself out. So yes, thank you for calling out the problem, but the problem isn't what you're saying it is. Was there value? Yeah, but the problem is if you jump to a conclusion, I'm out replacing a cable or re-terminating a cable, that's perfectly fine. You just got to slow down. You got to actually get to the what's going on. And that does take some critical thought. It does take slowing down a little bit, resisting your assumptions, and trying to actually solve the problem. And then the problem, well, it might actually be multiple problems. Hopefully you've got good change control so that you realize the thing that feels like a wireless problem is actually somebody did something on the radius back end, this morning, 2 hours ago. And it's just now catching up as people come into work and start reauthing. Or the radius servers got redone. And oh, by the way, we lost the switch in this other building. But if you're just going too fast, all of this can start to sound like some other problem that isn't the problem. So again, the nuance capability is the ability to slow down, sort it out, think critically, don't be in a hurry. And then you also need a degree of wisdom. And to me, it's like, I don't know why we design these big, beautiful networks. We're putting out APs that cost, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 list price, putting out Cadillac grade hardware. We're investing in all of this training. We're all learning how to use Ekahau and Hamina and IB-Wave. And, we're spending all this money on high-end testers, and we're doing all of this stuff. And as soon as anything happens, oh, geez, we got a Wi-Fi problem. We instantly show that we have very little faith in this big, beautiful framework that we put out there and our own skills. I just don't get it. So to me, wisdom is, wireless problem. It's don't blame the Wi-Fi. It's probably not there. Find where the problem actually is. Slow down. The Wi-Fi is just the tip of the spear. Define your scope before you start trying to figure out what the problem is. You got to define the problem. You've got to be able to understand the entire network environment. Again, 802.11 is on one side of the AP. There might be some tunneling back to controllers, some tunneling back to VLAN concentrators. Those pieces at layer 2 are going to connect to routers. Those routers are going to connect to other routers. There's going to be core services. There might be firewalls. Even if you don't administer each and every piece, you have to at least understand the lines on the diagram and the boxes on the diagram. And also, to me, wisdom is looking for as many meaningful data points as you can get. To me, that's, the dashboard, whatever value you can get out of it, syslog, good trouble ticket input, and if you can't get it, go find it. If the help desk isn't getting good information, try to get to the end users that are suffering, and try to get the story told in a technical way that you can understand with as many points as you can get. To me, that's wisdom. And that's also as important as the fundamentals and the nuanced thinking. From the technical side, there's going to come a time, like I said, the dashboards can't tell you everything. At the same time, when you're gathering up everything you need before you leave before you leave the office to go hunting for the problem, this is all the kind of stuff I talked about that you're going to want to get. Tell me as much as you can tell me from all of these data sources, put it all together, start the formal plan. Kind of poking fun at Python and the API. It just drives me nuts when, there's basic stuff that should be in a dashboard that, oh, well, just go run the API and just do this Python thing. And like, put that away before I soapbox and go off. But basically, from the office, there's a lot you can get before it's time to walk the floor. Wouldn't it be nice if you never had to walk the floor because AI was that good and it could tell you, you don't need to go anywhere. This is the problem. We are a long way from that. So you take all the knowledge you collected when you were in the office, you know who your points of contact are. When I say that, end users suffering with the problem, who can unlock doors, if you need an escort, all of your important points of contact, including if you can't figure it out and it seems like a problem up the stack, who do you call, to ask about router issues? Who do you call to talk about firewall stuff? Points of contact can be pretty far ranging, but it's important to know who you might need to get in touch with as you proceed. analysis tools that you actually know how to use. I see a lot of people out there trying, I'm going to go troubleshoot with my smartphone, and I downloaded this app that I really haven't put any time into, and that's going to be what I'm out there troubleshooting with. Anything you take out to actually troubleshoot, you better know how to use. And if you're not in a position to dispatch somebody who does know quite what they're doing, and you got to send somebody maybe perhaps less skilled, ideally they would have analysis tools that even if they don't know how to use, they can save the data and then get it to the senior people who do know how to interpret it. And that could be PCAPs. That could be things like the, NetAlly with their handhelds and, Link Live View. Um, you know, Seven Signal is great for this kind of stuff, gathering data that senior people can look at when, you have like the mobile eye in the hands of the mobile people, whatever. You have to know how to use the tools to get any value out of the tools. Have to understand what good is when it comes time to do, to justify, something as being bad. See a lot of times people complain about, well, on my smartphone, I only got 60 megabits. Well, what's it capable of? I don't know really. I guess I have to go look, and then you find out it's a 1x1 11N adapter in the phone, and 60 megabits is all it's capable of. So what is good and what is bad is all subjective. It's all dependent upon the particulars of the situation. If you're going to need to do any 802.1x testing, you need to have an account that you can troubleshoot with. You got to have passwords. This is not comprehensive, right? This is just enabling your own success when you get out there. And perhaps the last bullet is the most important. You need to have a strategy that you've developed that actually works. And then you have to have presence of mind to know, when I troubleshoot, I do these 10 things. Okay, I'm on step 4. It's time to deviate. Something weird came up. I'm not gonna go to step 5, 6, and 7. Step 4 is weird enough, and what I'm saying, to take me in another direction. And you got to roll with the flow. Wireless can be weird at times, and you got to know when it's time to flex. So we've gathered up information in the office. We've gone out. We've done the troubleshooting. What does it all amount to here? We'll get there. What about all that awesome telemetry? What about the dashboards? Yeah, okay, I get it. I get that the vendors want to sell you lots of data. They want to present lots of information, and you're supposed to get all excited about it. Yes, it can be really, really cool, and it can be great fun to get involved with, and just to roll around in and just relish. Look at all this cool stuff that got exposed. I could never see this before. Look at this new system showing me all of this. A lot of times I find that all of that comes at the expense of simple reporting that I need. It's like, yeah, but I just need to know this fairly simple data set for the last 7 days. Well, we can't really get you that. Well, for that, you're going to have to go off to Splunk. Yeah, we don't see the world the way you see it for wanting this simple stuff. You're supposed to roll around in all this data and get excited. It's like I say, it's really odd times. But if the network is designed well and the underlying code is solid, I would rather spend my time on other pursuits. I have a lot more to do than just get fixated on all this red and all this telemetry data that perceptibly nobody is complaining. There is no perceptible problem. It's fun to look at all of this stuff, but if it doesn't actually tell you realistic problems and lessen my time to resolution rather than extend it because there's so much to sort through, it's just not really a legitimate sell. So what do you need to troubleshoot Wi-Fi? Well, we're getting there. We've danced around it. My question to you is, do you know any one individual, anybody who's really, really good at solving Wi-Fi problems? I know a couple of people that are, and they're phenomenal to watch work, and especially if they can articulate what they're doing and how and all of that. And chances are they're also good at solving other network stuff. They know when the right tool, when it's the right time to use a particular tool. They know how to critically think. They know how to look at a dashboard and say, yep, 98% of this I do not care about. That 2%, boy, that's going to help me. So what that means is the third bullet down, it's a mindset. That's what you need to troubleshoot Wi-Fi the most. It's the right mindset first and foremost. The tools and all of that absolutely come along, but if you don't have that mindset, um, you know, the tools and all the data, they don't do all that much for you. So this is where I end it. And I say that that is what you most need to troubleshoot enterprise Wi-Fi problems. Nothing new under the sun. This is what we learn in CWNA. This is what we learn in Wireless 101. This is when you're brand new and you've got a mentor. They're helping you develop the right mindset. That is what it takes to support Wi-Fi the most effectively, even in the face of AI and AI-enabled systems.